Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership Heart podcast. And today I have Dean Wegner on as my guest. And as we talk a little bit, you'll understand exactly why. But someone from that listens to my show said, oh my gosh, I know it's the perfect person to come on as a guest. And I love the focus, given even just where we are right now in America and where I'm at with my own personal life with my son in the military. So welcome, Dean. Let's dive into
Well,
as
Heather,
well.
I'm honored to be your guest. And once we had a chance to catch up a little bit more and heard about our personal connections, even more excited to see where this discussion goes.
So tell everybody a little bit about, where you are on your leadership journey right now.
So let me start personally, Heather, because God, family, country is where the priorities line up. And we were talking a little bit about family before. And just last year, my wife Kelly and I celebrated anniversary number 30. And you and I are just getting to know
Wow.
each other, but I'm a lot to put up with. So thankful for her love and partnership over 30 years. And we have four amazing kids. So we have two daughters, 27 and 24. We have a 21-year-old son who's a freshman or just finishing his freshman year at West Point. So he's an Army hockey player like his dad, just fortunately much better than his dad. And then we still have one at home. We have our 15-year-old son, Eskel, that we adopted from Ethiopia. And I always, Heather, love to start there with family because ultimately where leadership starts and what's most important to me starts at home.
Absolutely. Yes. And so then tell us what you're up to these days that's like really focused on like a personal mission for you as well.
Yeah. So I tell everybody now I'm a veteran and an entrepreneur. So after graduating from West Point in 1993, went to flight school, learned how to fly helicopters, did have a unique opportunity after flight school, went to the Army Special Forces Ranger School. But when I left the Army in 2000, Heather couldn't even spell entrepreneur. Had no idea this world existed. And, reason being, had an amazing dad growing up. And for 30 years, he worked for a Fortune 500 company. And that's what all of his friends, that's what most of our neighbors did. So that's the only world I knew. So I worked for Procter and Gamble and Mars, worked for big brands like Crest and Tide and M&M. So that's a whole lot of stories and all the
Mm.
brand experience and everything I learned there. But to your question now, Authentically American is our brand, and we are an apparel brand. And think of us like a Nike or Land's End, but instead of made in China, it's all made here in the US. And most people have no idea where their shirt is made, which to give you an idea how rare American made is, back when I graduated from West Point in 1993, over 50% was made in the US. Today it's 3. Next to nothing's made here. The heart of our mission is our passion for creating American jobs. We just happen to be in the apparel business.
I love that. How big is the outfit, the organization?
So we are a seven-figure brand right now. We launched in 2017 from a blank sheet of
Nice.
paper. And we were talking a little bit about the current administration and all the talk about tariffs and support for American manufacturing. So back when we launched 7 years ago, that was nothing that was being discussed. So we've got a nice tailwind right now, and we work with thousands of businesses. And we're starting to build out a whole new sales team because very quickly, thousands of businesses that we serve will be tens of thousands. And these are many of them are veteran-owned businesses. They're patriotic. They don't want their employees wearing a shirt that's Nike or made in China. They want a brand like ours. They just don't know we exist, which is another reason, Heather, why. So thankful for the invite to be your guest.
Yeah, it was when the person who said they'd listened to my show and saw the alignment. Well, I think I'm not even sure at that point I disclosed. So for those who are listening, and maybe this could be the first time you're listening, I don't know, or you heard it but you forgot it, or you missed the episode where I talked about sending my son off. So he is now at the U.S. Naval Academy. He's what they call a plebe. So it's just the first summer where they're doing basic training, and we dropped him off, and it was hotter than heck. I was like, holy smokes, people actually live here in Annapolis,
Oh,
Maryland. And then we had like a day of delightful retreat, where there was just it was not much sun, not much heat. It was so cool. I'm like, oh, I bet you they're all feeling good right now, but
yeah.
the level of pride you get, and then also the level of awareness that you gather about these things like American made go up when you have the experience. Like for you, for example, prior to West Point. Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you had a huge runaway, kind of like my son. He had already been doing 5 or 6 years of Civil Air Patrol before he decided, well, and he was like pilot. He already knew it since he was like 12 or 10, right? And so I don't know if you were that person or if something became heightened in you or something made you more aware of it. And then after now having been in the military, the desire to kind of elevate America increased. I'm just curious about that.
Well, it really was something that built, from that very first plebe year, which is we're also affectionately called plebes at West Point. So, from that very first year at West Point, spending 4 years there and 7 years serving this great nation of ours. I mean, it truly was, Heather, an honor to serve this great nation of ours and have an opportunity to serve in the world's greatest armed forces. And, from that foundation at West Point, to flight school, to Ranger school, serving active duty, I mean, I truly fell in love with this country.
Mm.
And in spite of our faults, we truly live in the greatest nation in this world. And I'm excited for you and your husband and your family to go to your first Army Navy game
Okay.
because I've invited some friends before, and these are people that have no affiliation with the military. And when they go there and they attend that and they see the march on and see the whole festivities, that I mean, it's just one of those moments where you
Oh.
put your hand on your heart and say, you know what? This is a great country and this is what it's all about. I mean, great men and women serving this incredible nation of ours who
Mm.
want to stand up and serve and truly have an opportunity to make a difference.
Curious. This is a total side note, but I am so curious. Are you still like an avid runner, or do you like do all the push-ups? Do you still do all the things that they have you do, in the military? It's like so diligent when they have you focus on that.
So I don't run as much, Heather, because I'm now in my 50s, but I don't want to slow down. Inertia was one of the concepts I embraced about, continuing to move and an object in motion will continue in motion. And
Hmm.
50 is the new 30 is my mantra.
Yeah.
So I don't run as much just to save my knees, but even with the crazy busy demands of being an entrepreneur, I work out every day. I don't miss a day. It's not as long as I would like, but it's a quick
Hmm.
20, 30 minutes because I've found, to have the stamina and have the, hours that I keep, I've got to have, a fairly strong, healthy physical life as well.
So was there, I am curious, and I'm going back. This is just curiosity
Uh-huh.
again that's developed over time. Going into West Point, then going into getting, the special armor or the Ranger program and all that. Was there something like early on that would have given your parents a sign that you were going in this direction? Or I'm just curious about that too. I was just very curious.
Yeah, well, Heather, this goes all the way back to high school. And I really had two goals coming out of high school. Number one, I wanted to play Division I hockey. I mean, that was a dream growing up playing hockey, born upstate New York near the Canadian border and playing all the way through high school and travel and playing there. And then the other goal, I wanted to get the best possible education I could. And I was, of course, familiar with West Point, but was not that familiar with it until the coach called. He saw me playing at a tournament and said, Dean, I really think your play and who you are would be a great fit for West Point and had an opportunity to go on a visit, did a little more research on the history. And I still remember, Heather, one of the posters they sent me, one of the recruiting posters that said, much of the history we teach was made by people we taught. And it has pictures of
Mm,
Grant and Eisenhower and former presidents and
yes.
generals. And I'm like, what an incredible rich history. And that year, West Point was the number one ranked academic institution. And I'm like,
Mm.
and I also play Division I hockey. I mean, does it get any better than that?
Gosh, that's crazy. Yes, that is amazing to start it at that age where you're already like really inquisitive. I remember with our son, we sent him to a camp. It was an Air and Space Museum camp here in Colorado, and he was with his brother and a friend. They put him in one of those plane simulators where they bop you upside down, turn you all around, and his brother's like, "Get me the heck out of this thing!" And Dominic's
Uh-huh.
like, "Can we go again?" And
Yes.
then what they did is after that camp, they invited whoever from that camp, whoever wanted to go and fly with the pilot down at the local
Oh, wow.
airport. And he was like, like just, yeah. And then he went up, and the pilot at some point let him take a hold. They're both in there, but he'd like take a hold of it, and he flew a little bit. And he said he got off of
Oh,
that at
boy.
10. He got off of that plane, and he was just like, when can I do that again? Like he was just like, what? You could not believe how excited it was. And so
Well,
then
Heather,
after
how
that, we had to wait. I know it was so cute. It was so cute to see. 'Cause we have a video. I actually took a video of when he came off the plane, and so I showed him to him today. And I'm like, this is going to be something we can show at like some graduation and totally
how
embarrass you.
sweet to have those experiences early on and really entrench in him, where he wanted to go in the future and then, being able to make it because it is not easy to get into
Yeah,
Naval Academy to West Point. I mean, it's less than 10% that get in, and there's, I think the last numbers I heard were like 14 or 15,000 that apply.
yeah,
And only 1,000 or 1,400 or so get in. So it's
yes,
incredibly competitive. So much fun to hear about your son and his journey.
it really is. So when we think about, because I mean, I've been an entrepreneur now for
Mhm.
full time since 2017. I did kind of as a side hustle as a consultant and things. So I have a
Uh-huh.
consulting practice and then started doing more speaking after that and training. But I can think about kind of like the early days. Well, when I first started, I was like, what am I doing? Should I do this? And again, I did it as a side hustle. And then finally, when I took the leap to do it, I felt like I hadn't looked back. I mean, COVID had its own little challenges, at least in the beginning, but then I figured that out real fast. I feel like we have to kind of figure things out if we want to live or survive, right? And so I had my first real, like it was my second book, but my first real book through a publisher that came out then. And I remember just through that time, like always having faith, because you mentioned faith before, faith
Hmm.
that like I was just going to be taken care of, did the work ethic. So did the work to produce the results. And then, have evolved and said, in what ways have in what ways did COVID make you have to evolve through this process? And what other ways have you like surprising things you've learned along this entrepreneurial journey?
I will tell you, Heather, not that I ever thought it was going to be easy. I knew it was going to be challenging, but I had no idea, what I was getting into because, at Procter and Gamble worked on brands like Crest and Tide and M&Ms and everything I took for granted back in those days, the supply chain, systems, process, the team, everything that we had, we've had to build from the ground up. And we started in 2017, sounds like the same year you started, and we were a blank sheet of paper that back then. And we spent a couple of years building the foundation, and 2020 was going to be our really breakthrough year. And then you know what happened in 2020. And we have contract manufacturing. So our t-shirts, for example, are produced in Texas. Everyone loves our socks. They're produced in North Carolina. So 11 states across the US. And the real moment initially when factories and everything's being shut down for COVID, are we going to have a business? And most everything back then was either via phone or via in-person meetings. And probably one of the few good things that came out of COVID is the prevalence of video conference, like you and I are talking via Zoom. So
Yeah.
now, myself, my team, we're on the, computer, virtual Zoom Teams all day long, meeting with customers. And it made us realize that, you know what? You don't have to be there in person. Obviously, if you can do that, make that happen, it's possible. But, that's enabled us to be much more efficient and able to scale more quickly.
It's interesting. And have there been any other, besides that, which was a surprise for every single one of us, any other kind of ahas or like just really critical learnings now that you have been solid at this post-pandemic too?
I'll tell you, Heather, probably the biggest learning. And this is, I think, one of the few things I probably, took the wrong learning from, the P&G and G and Mars days, because when you have like brands like Crest and Tide and M&Ms and you have Super Bowl ad budgets, I mean, you can have a pretty wide range. And one of the mistakes we made early on was trying to be all things to all people.
Mm,
When you have a Super Bowl ad budget and such a massive marketing machine, I mean, you can have a much broader, focus. But when my marketing budget's about this big, and we just realized that, the fact that we're American made is very unique and very differentiated. But sadly, what I found, Heather, is most people don't care. They flat out just don't care. And to be fair, I think most people initially don't know, where their shirt is made. And I'm
hmm
okay with that because that gave birth to our tagline, "Where is yours made?" And it's designed to be provocative. If your son's there, be like, "Hey, great looking shirt. Where is yours made?"
mm,
Want people to look at the tag, and the next time they make a purchase or the next time they put on their new favorite shirt, to be shocked and disappointed when they see a made in China tag or something other than made in the US. But
That's so interesting.
really, and really, Heather, I guess when we launched in 2017, I mean, that excitement and passion that entrepreneurs feel, I thought, everyone was like me. Everyone was like you and your family. Either they have served this great nation of ours, they're patriotic, and they would respect and appreciate, and our brand would just flourish of the fact because that we're American made. And sadly, what I found that is not the case. And in full transparency, I, for a while, was quite angry. I mean, I was angry, like, how can you not care? How can you not, have something burning inside when the shirt you're putting on your back is made in China by our arch enemy? But from a business standpoint, Heather, I've had to set that anger issue aside and embrace that we can't be all things to all people. And we
Mm,
still have a consumer side. You can go to our website as an individual, but 90% of our revenue is custom. So we
mm,
work with thousands of businesses. Many of them are veteran owned. They're all patriotic and they don't want their employees wearing a shirt that's Nike or made in China. They want a brand like ours. They just don't know we exist, which is why we're really trying to crank up that sales and marketing machine to really get the word out.
mm. I love that. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and that was part of the reason I'm like, yeah, well, I'd like to do that. I'd like to,
Yeah.
help you get the word out here. So, and this is probably one of the more unique conversations I'm having anyway. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I had an interview with a submarine officer because again, the more I get into this, the more I'm just like my curiosity increases. The thing that I think is so interesting, even just about this conversation and that you're on here, because again, maybe 4 years ago I would never have had you on a guest. I would have not said yes, right? But I
Uh-huh.
do find that
Mhm.
whether we're talking about this topic or any topic, the more that we open ourselves up or like expose ourselves to different things that are just happening, period, the more inquisitive and curious we become about those things. They become, like you were saying, not caring or caring. They become something we can start to care about because we are aware of them. We've spent time with people
Mhm.
that are different in that way. And so it's, to me, that's the thing that's the most enlightening about it, period, is that you think about
Oh,
like
yeah.
where we go in phases of our life, the people that we're around, the things we're exposed to, and the things that we cared about before and the things that we didn't care about, vice versa, just
Oh, yeah.
depending on where we're at in our life. So I am curious to know, let's switch a little bit over to your leadership. And when I say leadership with heart to you, what do you think of?
So that is something that's been instilled to me, and this is where that common connection, because oftentimes the way it's referred to in the military is more around servant leadership. And that to me, it's all about heart and saying, you know what, those that I lead, those that I'm trusted with, being in charge with, I mean, that's ultimately what's really important. And when you lead with heart, you put the interest of others first. And that was instilled from me from day one, being a plebe at the bottom of the pecking order
Mhm,
and having some, unfortunately, not so great leaders who didn't put the interest of others first, and really having some role model leaders that I said, you know what, that's somebody who I want to be like. That's
mhm,
somebody whose leadership I want to role model.
mhm. That's a big part of it, isn't it? We're all being watched, like everybody's watching you at some point, right? And the question is, what is it do you want them to see?
Oh,
And
yeah.
then would you want them to emulate your behaviors? And that's just, I don't think that's something we give nearly enough time to.
Yeah. And I mean, what you see that reminds me of something else that I learned, at West Point, Heather, was, the definition of character, and there's the textbook definition, but one that I was shared with me that really resonates. Character is really doing what's right when no one else is watching.
Yeah.
It's that
Yeah.
harder right or the easier wrong. And, just because your commander or your first sergeant or the general is not watching you doesn't mean you do the right thing.
Mm.
I should say it means you do the right thing all the
Yeah,
time, even if they're not
exactly.
watching.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting because I would never try to purport to be a perfect person or to say that I've never done something
Oh,
wrong or whatever, right? Like for me, yeah, that would be extremely hypocritical. Obviously, I try my hardest. And I think that's the key is that this journey for leadership is not about perfection. It is about continual learning, trying to, take baby steps to learn to get better and to have a little
oh.
grace in the process, but at the same time, always be looking forward to try to be better.
I haven't made a mistake, Heather, since this morning. So, and that's the mindset that leadership is one of those, ideals that, I mean, I've never met a perfect leader.
Yeah.
But you talked about it, that continuous improvement. So if I'm at this level of leader here today, next week, next month, next year, it could be, continual growth and learning. And that's why I love when my friend, highlighted me to your podcast, and there's just some great insights and learning from the people that you talk with and have some great dialogues with. There's great books, there's great trade journals.
Yep.
Leadership is one of those journeys that you should constantly be, focused on continuous learning.
And you think of a time when maybe you weren't that servant leader or that leader with heart, like a specific story that you could share that you can remember. And then what did you do to come out of it? Like, was there something that like popped you in your head that made you realize, oops, this is the wrong path I'm going down? Can you think of any story that you'd share with us?
I wish I could say no, Heather, but unfortunately, there are examples. And I think one of the ones that is, not fond, but prevalent with me is when I initially made the transition from the military to the business community. And not that I felt like it was lost time, but I thought, after 7 years serving in the Army, I thought, okay, I'm delaying the start from my business career by 7 years. And I joined a Big Five consulting firm, KPMG, and it was very task oriented. It was very timeline oriented. It's like, okay, I'm here at a manager level, and X number of months, I want to be senior manager, then a director, then a managing director, and it was all about me and my growth and my development and my promotions. And not that I forgot, but I really lost sight of what's truly most important, and that's the team that I'm leading. And towards the end of that, as I was traveling and realizing I was away from my family, and I really needed to go ahead and recalibrate my priorities. That's one of them that came to mind. That what, Dean, you kind of lost sight of what's most important, and that is the team that you are in charge of leading. Because if you are going to be a manager, you're going to be a commander, you're going to be a president, you're going to be a CEO. If you're in charge of a group, I mean, it's really that leadership with a heart. It's that servant leadership that really builds that highly engaged winning culture.
Mm. Somebody had to kind of, I always say there's like normally some catalyst that helps us see the error of our ways or the error of our thinking. It's a person or a situation or whatever it is. And so I think we all need that little, I call it a little smack, but
It was a big smack for me. So like, okay, let's get it back in line here and get focused on what's truly most important.
did you end up, because one thing that I found, I think this is just kind of common to the leader. There's this thing that follows us, and we all have our thing, but there's a thing that follows us. And so that we maybe smacked once, we learn at least temporarily, and we change, and then we do it some more, and then we get smacked again. Did you ever find like that thing kept rearing its head?
So I think there's always the temptation, to go ahead and, be career focused, be, focused on things other than the team. But I think what really comes back to me is saying, what, if ultimately we want to be successful, it's not about me. I mean, if we want to be successful, the way we're going to be most successful is focusing on our team. And if I start every day saying, okay, what does my team need to be successful? How can I set them up for success? How can I provide them the resources they need? How can I remove the barriers that they need? That is ultimately what's going to enable our business and our brand to be successful.
Yeah. So for the people who are listening now who might be, on an entrepreneurial journey, maybe they could be just kind of maybe they feel like they're hitting a wall. What might be a couple pearls of wisdom you might give them to help them keep going?
Well, this is a question I get from my kids quite often, Heather. And, being a West Point grad, Army hockey player, Army Ranger, I've never been one that's shy of hard work. But I will tell you, the last 7 years of starting this business from scratch, I have never worked more than I have in my life. And I still keep the priorities around God, family, country, but it doesn't feel like work, because the
Mm,
advice I give is find something you truly love. Find something you're passionate about. Find something you truly believe in, because if that's the case, it will truly feel like you never work another day in your life.
mm, yeah, so true. Yeah, and people say that if you do what you're passionate about, and people say, "Oh, that's hogwash." If you do what you're passionate about, everything will flow. There has to be a level of the hard work, focus, business, planning, all the things that add on to it, right? You can't just be like, this is so fun, this is my passion, and you have no strategy and you have no goals and you don't have, like you said, like marketing prowess or something that gets it out
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Because like you do, like, obviously if people don't care, your job is mostly to make them care. Right.
Mhm.
So you have to like elevate their awareness. Otherwise, if they're not aware, they can't care about something they're not aware of. I mean,
So
right.
there, you're highlighting, the second piece because one I say is the passion.
Mhm.
And the other one is, finding something that you truly have some level of giftedness, some level of skill or expertise. And it's a longer discussion, probably for another episode or another discussion, you and I in the future, because, I entered the entrepreneurial ranks through acquisition. And the business I bought was a manufacturing company that produced dress uniforms for the military.
Mm.
And that's what got me into apparel. That's what exposed me there. But the business I bought was a manufacturer. And we had a
Mm.
100,000 square foot facility and we produced thousands of uniforms every week for Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And I love that, but the core competency in our business was manufacturing. And I love to visit a manufacturing facility, but when I walk into a manufacturing facility, Heather, my head hurts. I'm like, I don't even understand how that works. So, had the same passion for, serving, military with that mission we had there, but
Hmm.
that was nothing that I enjoyed, nothing I was gifted at.
Mm.
My background is sales, marketing, customer strategy.
Yeah.
So manufacturing is still important, but we have contract manufacturing in 11 states. We make our socks in North Carolina. So we have incredible product, but the core competency of our brand, is not on the manufacturing side.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and educating
This
us
was
on on
fun.
just a new way of doing it, and also just highlighting the what people can do and how successful you can be post military career too. So, pretty interesting insights. I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Well, Heather, I'm thankful to have a new friend in my old hometown of, Denver, and look forward to keeping in touch.
And thank you everybody for listening to this episode of the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.